what was going on is they claimed they lost the recorded record of the vote count from those machines.
Okay.
But they had recorded them piecemeal, and they were showing that Doc was losing by about 90 some votes.
Mm.
Well, this janitor walked up to Judge Swearingen and I and said, "You gentlemen looking for something about them votes?" I said, "Yes, sir, we are." Well, they got them on one of them shiny discs, what they call them CDs.
Yeah.
Say, they put it in that second drawer, that disc right over there. So we went and got these people and said, "All right, open this desk." So now, if you say that you just misplaced it, that's all right. Otherwise, we both called our bailiffs up, had them over there in uniform. If we get anything funny, place them under arrest for election fraud.
Wow.
So when we didn't realize it, it must have slipped in this drawer. So it wound up Doc won by 124 votes. See, they were trying to steal that election too. They
Yeah.
used to do it routinely. When they put those deballed machines in, they could easily do it because there's no firewall security or anything.
Okay.
Once you hack them, by the way, they stay hacked, and all you got to do is use a certain code which you can put in by just a smartphone with that text function I was telling you
Yes,
about.
sir. Yes, sir.
And you can forever dictate the election. It's what you call differential vote counts. You simply put in what percentage you want the people to have.
Okay.
Let's say I want my client candidate to win by 52%.
You could
Let-
actually
You
control
can
that with an
control
app.
that. So they will put extra candidate numbers in the machines and divide the stuff back and forth. Now, one of the sure ways of telling, and it came out in my race, is on write-in votes, which they try to do. There's one person, two people, three people, 5, 10, 100, 127. But you can't have a fraction of a person. You can tell there's fraud going on when you notice that the write-in vote will have point something of a person.
Yes, sir.
So
Why is there no federal laws that
that's
mandate
why
them
the
not using these
feds
machines?
gave the money to Shelby County in 2008.
Okay, but I mean,
But
giving them money, is that the same as a mandate that you're not supposed to
they
use those
can't
machines? You
do
better
that.
not
But
be.
it's like you say, you guys got a corruption problem. You're the Democratic Party. You're the ones that are getting victimized, and here we go. We're going to pay for this. All you got to do is have we, the below signed county commissioners, do hereby resolve to replace the deball voting machines and sign off. That's all you need. But you can't do that, and you got three holdouts every time it comes up for the last 9 years who won't go for it. And then one somebody 3 years ago was talking about it'll cost 500,000 to keep me in, to put me in the mayor's race or to keep me out. So he didn't get in the race, but look at what happened to get Strickland in. You got five blacks running against each other, against the incumbent.
Yeah.
Strickland slips in.
Yeah, yeah. That's been a tool they've used for years.
Yeah, but it's gotten ridiculous now.
Yeah.
And you see the thing.
I think that layman's terms we would call it splitting the vote.
Okay, and now what happened with let's say the latest fiasco with the Democratic Party? All right, they had a problem with a certain young man that was the chairman. Okay, he's no longer the chair. He resigned under a cloud. But then when they came around to get a replacement, they wound up getting a guy that's a lieutenant on the sheriff's department.
Okay.
Now, he does not know how to run a meeting. He knows no parliamentary procedure. He does not know the bylaws. Nobody does. And he is the subordinate for a Republican elected sheriff.
Okay.
So he's going to be the Democratic Party chair in his job that he gets to pay his house note, car note, food, and take care of all of his business with is subject to the whim of a person from the opposite party. That's a built-in disaster.
Amazing.
The woman they had before that, she worked for one of the hospitals, and they frankly didn't like it, so they were running her back and forth and around and about. So we have not even any effective political leadership.
I want to turn the corner a minute, Judge, and ask you briefly. You were presiding. Correct me if I'm wrong.
James Earl Ray.
Of the appeal.
It wasn't an appeal. What they call it is a post-conviction relief proceeding when your appeals have run out. Now, here's the basis. Ray had filed all sorts of appellate proceedings to overturn his conviction.
Mm-hmm.
First, you have to understand, he never confessed. Never confessed. And in the transcript of the proceedings where he was sentenced, the judge admonishes him 3 times to sit down. Mr. Ray, you have to sit down. But Your Honor, I never said I killed Dr. King. I'm just pleading guilty, not confessing. I'm pleading guilty under Alford. Now, there's an old case called Alford versus North Carolina that says you may plead guilty even if you're actually innocent.
Mm-hmm.
If you think doing so is in your best interest, and you do so freely, voluntarily, understandingly, knowingly, advisedly, and intelligently,
Mm-hmm.
with advice of counsel, and the state has a reasonable factual basis upon which to otherwise proceed. Now, here's the problem. When they got to me, he had tried every one of the rest of them except the state had no factual basis on which to proceed other than his entry of a guilty plea. The only real evidence the state had was the rifle.
Right.
It's a Remington 760 Game Master, caliber 30-06. Now,
go ahead, sir. Listen, go right ahead.
What happens is that I discover when I get into the record that the Memphis Police Department has a written conclusion that Ray's not the gunman. I discover he's never confessed. I discovered that the first judge to hear the matter, the late Honorable Preston Battle, had said that something's wrong with the ballistics test and he ordered the rifle retested. I looked into it and I ordered it retested
as well.
Okay, now the first time they said I couldn't do it, and then they removed me from the case. And then a week after that, the Supreme Court said the rifle needs to be retested.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it comes back. Then they take me off again. And then they say you can't do this, but then they change the law a week after that, and I get put back in on the case. So I got taken off 3 or 4 times and put back on. The last time, by the Court of Criminal Appeals, they'd taken me off, but then before the Supreme Court could rule on it, Ray died and his Tennessee lawyer died. But then 2 weeks after that happened, the Supreme Court issued this rule on the gatekeeper, which is the trial judge has the authority and the power to sit there and control expert testimony, et cetera, et cetera. And if there's no jury, I could call my own witnesses.
Mm-hmm.
So what I looked at was this. I looked at this evidence they had. First off, there's this big thing about the rifle was tested. Turned out it wasn't. We found out that there were some memoranda that the FBI had issued that had come to light under the Freedom of Information Act, and a thing they had that was enabled by Congress, and an executive order by George Herbert Walker Bush and also Bill Clinton. And each federal agency had to send all of their records to this repository of records on assassinations and attempted assassinations. So you could go in and pay a fee, they'd research it and supply it to you. So we got these memoranda from the FBI where they were discussing killing Dr. King for various reasons. I looked at the evidence, and when we wound up getting the rifle retested, that weapon that's now in the Civil Rights Museum is the murder weapon was excluded. It isn't even close. The bullet they pull out of Dr. King's body has a rate of rifling twist that reflects the weapon that shot it of 1 turn in 11¼ inches. In other words, if the bullet moved down the barrel 11¼ inches, it would turn over 1 time. Ray's rifle has a rate of rifling twist of 1 turn in every 10 inches. And there were some other features. So Ray's rifle isn't
It's
even
not.
close ballistically.
It's not the right.
They had this thing, and I ordered them to use scanning electron microscopy, which is what they used, and they blew the bullet up the size of this house, so you could easily see the striations and everything. It isn't even close. But what was also interesting is that they ran into the wrong person to run this game on.
Yeah.
And I knew, I said, okay, 11 1/4 inches is a rate of rifling twist. That set off an alarm bell. So what happens is at the time, 1968, the Army Marksmanship Unit had made 63 special barrels out of stainless steel that had that rate of rifling twist.
Mm-hmm.
They were installed in 62 M14s that had been specially modified, and they were known as XM21s.
Okay.
They came with a psionic suppressor made by a company called Psionics that made those old Mag 10s you see in the adventure stuff.
Yes, sir.
Compact submachine gun. And they had a 3-9 red field adjustable scope modified by a company known as Leatherwood, so you could auto range by dialing in the magnification. And when you did that, there was a cam that would raise the scope's rear up and down, so you didn't have to compensate. You could dial it right on for the range. And it had this suppressor on it that would not silence it, but it would disguise the sound signature. Now, if you've ever been shot at where there are trees around by a rifle, you can pretty much trace the path of the bullet back because it goes crack, 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 crack. That's a small sonic boom.
Okay.
And you know, oh, it's coming from over there. Now, the military got 62 of these things, and the Army and the Navy, who were sending them to the SEALs and the Marines, wanted them. Well, turns up there's an invoice from late December 1967. 5 of them were inventoried to the FBI.
Okay.
The military is hollering about why do they need them. Well, they demanded them back, so another inventory was taken. In April 1968, the FBI claimed they could only find 4 of them. One of them was missing.
One of them was missing.
One of them was used to shoot King. Now, where did King get shot from? Not the flop house. The detectives from the police department went by there, and it's interesting. I even got a, later on after I was off the bench, a sworn affidavit from the person. His name was Tommy Smith. He retired as head of homicide for MPD, and at the time he was the first detective on the scene.
Yes, sir.
And he gives a video deposition. They couldn't have shot anybody from the flop house. There's a limb this thick.
Yeah.
Going diagonally across the window where the bathroom was. You couldn't even see the Lorraine Motel. We came back an hour later from crime scene, and the tree had been cut down. We found out there had been a cut down order that morning, but it was issued to the sanitation department, and they just told somebody to go to hell, so it wasn't even cut down.
Well, let me ask you this, pardon the interruption. Over the years, my interest in that case, I've read up on that case, as well as some of the conspiracy theories, if you will, about it. One of those conspiracy theories stated that that shot couldn't have come from there. And the famous picture of Jesse Jackson and the other brothers on the balcony pointing to the right, I presume pointing over toward the coffee shop, was a diversion, and that the shot actually came from below.
No, it came from the fire station cafeteria, a dormitory cafeteria.
Which is that where the area where they're?
No.
Okay.
See, what's happening is it's got the psionic suppressor on it, which is designed to confuse the sound signature. So it did just what
he
it was
got
designed
shot here. Is that not correct?
No, it didn't.
Wow.
He got shot. See, this is the thing. If you hit somebody from the 45 yards away that the fire station is with a 30 caliber weapon, and you have an expanding bullet, which is what this was, you get a solid torso hit here to here. They can be standing next to an emergency room and they're not going to make it. That's a guaranteed fatality. energy equals mass times velocity squared. 2,600 feet per second on a 162 grain bullet, which is what it was. At that range, you got maybe 2,600 foot-pounds of energy. But with the psionic suppressor, the bullet is slowed down to around 1,100 feet per second. What you've got is a 30 caliber pistol, which has less power than a 9mm pistol bullet fired out of a regular pistol. So instead of taking this shot, they try to take a headshot and they almost miss. They hit King right here in the right cheek. Bullet goes through, takes out some molars, and wrecks his tongue, and he wouldn't have been able to speak so well.
Yes, sir.
Comes out right here between his jaws. He would have lived if that's all that would have happened. The bullet hits right here, ricochets along the clavicle, under the skin, and it nicks the carotid artery. That's what kills him. He bleeds out. Now, that was fired from the fire station. It's interesting. If you went by the fire station at the time of year, at the time this shot is occurring, the sun is behind the tower on the fire station. The fire station becomes a black silhouette.
Okay.
We went by there to look at it, and when people walk, they disappear when they get in between you and this silhouette because of the lighting.
Yes, sir.
The fire station tower had a dormitory on the second floor. This is where they have all fire stations. And they shot him from a setup on a table with one of the then sliding windows open about that far. It's a two-man team. Somebody from inside called out to say, he's coming out.
Yes, sir.
Now, if you want to check this out, Dick Gregory pulls the covers off of somebody recently deceased who says, in answer to his question, and he recorded it, he plays it on the YouTube thing, he says, why'd you step back in? He said, well, I didn't want to be in the line of fire. Well, how did you know there was going to be a line of fire?
That was my next question.
I put this question to several people. Not the question, I just told them what I had picked up in this investigation. And Reverend Jackson says, we got to get to the bottom of it. Reverend Lowry says, we got to get to the bottom of it.
Yeah.
Ben Hook says, let sleeping dogs lie. And this other person that Dick Gregory pulls the covers off of says, let sleeping dogs lie.
Sure.
Now, what has happened too is, see, King was going out the east side where the car was. This person got him and said, Dr. King, some of your fans are out by the pool. Can you make a stop outside, say hi to them before we leave?
Have you seen that video clip?
Oh yeah, I've seen it. It concurs with what I'd come up with in this investigation.
How in the world did he make that mistake?
No, wait a minute, hold on. I gotta tell you this. See, about 15, 16 years ago, when I had this show, I got approached by a representative from the Vatican.
Oh.
They wanted to do a mini-series on the assassination of King. I can't speak for them, but they considered King to be a holy man, and too bad he wasn't a Catholic. He would have been made a saint. But in any event, we put together this interesting crew, courtesy of Hollywood, to do a documentary, but it gets suppressed all the time because they don't want the truth to come out.
Right.
Now, let me tell you something else too. This was a recent development. The woman that invented this approached us and said, I've got some information for you. I'm the inventor.
Yeah. There's
an algorithm. You need a laptop to work it. It's not a polygraph test or a lie detector test. You don't have to hook anybody up to it. You just need a clear voice recording and a video of the person. And then they take the video and reduce it to an animation. And they analyze the body language and the tone of voice. Now, when people talk, only 15% of what they say consists of the words. 35% of the tone and 50% is body language. So they wanted to get an absolute bottom line profile on a liar.
Yeah.
So they rented 5 hours worth of tapes that some good old boys up in Nashville did on Ray, his last taped interview. They thought they were going to get a liar. They got freaked out when Ray came across all the way to category 34, except on 2 questions, is telling the absolute truth.
Mm.
Now, what did they use this algorithm for? The State Department and the Defense Department. Putin would talk and analyze what he was really saying. Soon from Korea would say something. They'd analyze him.
Mm.
When Osama bin Laden would issue those tapes, they would analyze Osama bin Laden to say, oh, well, this he's telling the truth, not this is an exaggerate, just what he really means. So anyway, they were astonished to find that Ray was telling the absolute truth. Now, why did he come to me? Well, since the Defense Department was using it, they were having some very serious problems internally with some of the officers who were concerned about some of the instructions they had been getting in the Bush and Obama administration about let's assassinate this guy, let's do this guy in by drone, let's torture this guy, and they really didn't like it.
Mm.
So this was an opportunity to illustrate, wow, look, we sit here and you see what happens when you let somebody get out of control. Ray's telling the truth. The only 2 questionable answers were these. If you didn't kill Dr. King, do you have any idea who really did? He says, I'm not sure. I don't know. That came out as equivocation. Said, well, who do you think did it? Said, I'm not sure. I don't really know. That came out as equivocation. But everything else came out, he's telling the absolute truth. So
who do you think did it, sir?
Well, I don't know the names, but I know
who's
in terms of
responsible?
what. It was a 2-man hit team of professionals.
Yes, sir.
They were official people acting in a maverick fashion, but with approval.
Okay.
Now, here's what I find strange. The fire marshal issued a statement that 2 days before King is assassinated, 2 government types come down and they go up to the top of the tower and look around for a while, come back down. He says they never went back up to the tower, but he refuses to say what else they did or did not do.
Yes.
All right. Based on conversations with Smith and other people that were there or around at the time, it looks like they left the rifle inside the fire station and got it out several hours after the shooting.
But nobody had any idea about the fire station at that time.
Well, whoever was at the fire station did.
Well, I'm speaking in terms of how they presented it
to
everybody else at the fire
bushes
station.
Or the fire station. I see.
Right.
When you shoot that kind of thing, you don't let the rifle hang out the window. The windows open into persons like from here to your door.
Yes, sir.
You've lined up your shot. The rifle is resting on sandbags or some other support.
Yes, sir.
And it's basically looking right at the spot. When the spotter gets the word saying he's coming, the shooter gets down, fine tunes it. Spotter says he's out, you got it, send it, boom, that's it. They leave it, somebody gets it out hours later. Now the ammunition is interesting too. I won't go into all of the metallurgical details, but they phoned it up real good.
Yeah, I would say it sounds from what you're telling me, we're dealing with military issued military weapons, which would allude to professionals.
Yeah, and the type of weapon that is consistent with the ballistics was inventoried to the FBI, 5 of them in December 1967.
But in April of 68, they had one missing.
One missing. Now, you see, the memoranda that the FBI has talking about whether King should be killed it's a discussion not on civil rights. That's dead. That's when everybody was getting militant. It's 1968.
Mm-hmm.
The discussion was based on him galvanizing the anti-war movement and revitalizing the labor movement. That's what they were worried about. Now, J. Edgar Hoover personally orders all auditory and visual surveillance on King to be stopped for 48 hours. And it had been going on continuously for years before that. But for that 48-hour period, he ordered it stopped.
Interesting.
Now, there was a black fireman up there at the fire station. There was a delay because they forgot about him. Well, he gets word that his son's been critically injured. He takes off to go check, finds the kid safe. He calls and say, "I'll be back." No, just take the day off. There are
getting him out of the picture.
Yeah, there are 5 or 6 black cops that are detectives or sergeants with an MPD. They're forming King's bodyguard. They get ordered to leave because there are reports that somebody's going to kill one of them. So they refuse to leave. There's a delay on King leaving. Finally they get him to come down to headquarters. Now Reddick, who refused to leave, it's interesting. Off the record, he said that when he absolutely refused, they set down 2 squad cars with 10 white cops. They wrestled him to the ground, double handcuffed him, and hog-tied him with a rope. And they threw him in the back seat of the squad car and took him away. Now, that's right before everything goes down, when everything hits the fan.
That sounds like the basic backdrop for all of the assassinations. If you compare, and we're going to wrap it up, Judge. If you can compare and contrast,
go ahead.
What's your feelings, if you have any, or your opinion on recently here, Reverend Sharpton being accused, or I should say, it's coming out that he was an FBI informant. He just states that he was only cooperating in an investigation.
Well, let's put it this way. I don't know, because I wasn't there. I don't have close knowledge of that. But the way the FBI worked for years was they got prominent blacks who had slipped a little bit. They had weird sexual practices, or they were gay or bi. They had maybe some money got slipped under a table, and they blackmailed them, and they got them to do all kinds of things. And one of the problems with the whole black civil rights movement was too much of the leadership was into what LGBT likes to deal with now. Or they got side money, and too many of them were compromised. So they played informants to keep that kind of thing from coming out.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So usually when you get something like that going on, there is that kind of flavor.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not going to say it here, but next time we talk, I'll tell you what I think's going on with that.
Okay. How do you feel about Trump with being the president?
Trump isn't the problem.
Trump is not the
problem. He's not the problem. Trump is what you call a catalyst. And by that I mean,
he's a facilitator of what they want to do.
It's like you got clear liquid. They used to do this in high school chemistry. You drop the catalyst in, shake the stuff up, and these black flakes, iron oxide, just magically appear in the water and drop to the bottom. The catalyst comes back out, floats to the top.
Okay.
What you're seeing now has been there for a while. It's just been concealed. What's going on now is the media is in a frenzy because their ratings are dropping for their programming for a number of reasons. So they want to keep themselves as viable broadcast entities, so they are sensationalizing the news.
Okay.
They're not about reporting information, they're about entertainment.
Okay.
What they don't realize is that in their obvious political efforts to push their administration, not administration, their agenda, which is essentially driven by radical feminism and LGBT stuff. That's their business. That's their right. But that's what they're doing. They have gotten into what Trump calls fake news, and they're losing credibility. But
So you give him some validity to that
yeah,
comment.
but
Of fake news.
I'm going to get back to the rest of it. See, they are causing to shake out what's been there, but we haven't seen.
Okay.
The stuff that you see about all of the white cops killing black people or blacks getting killed by the police, that's been going on forever, but they never covered it.
Yes.
They just got off into it. Now they find it's good for ratings, so you see it.
Yeah.
Actually, the incidents of that kind of thing have gone down. But it's good that people are getting angered by that because it motivates them to make changes.
Yes, sir.
And maybe some will come. What we do have that needs to be realized is that what has been happening for decades now is that you're being fed a bill of goods where the Politico feeds you your favorite little cause and you get emotionally behind it. But the people that pay their tab call the shots. Now, you've got the left and they have the right. And actually, they have the same puppet masters.
Okay.
But the left appeals to those who want the sugar plum fairy. The right appeals to those who want fearless leader. But most of them are beholden to the same behind the scenes interest, which in this case is high finance.
I got you.
Now, Trump is not in that crowd, and he's not a person driven by big oil either. But you get this kind of thing, so he just is where he is. If the Democratic Party had picked Bernie Sanders, there'd probably be a decent Bernie Sanders in the White House. They could have really won with that one. But years ago, they set up that super delegate thing just because they wanted Hillary in there. In other words, they wanted a woman at all costs, irrespective of personal merit.
Yes.
And they couldn't have picked a more divisive candidate than Hillary Clinton, who basically, if you analyze her record, is all wrong.
Yeah.
When she and I'm a little older than her, and I can remember in the 60s, they had her out there as just a young Republican female scholar. She was head of the Republican Party at Wesley Girls University, and she was going around advocating that militant blacks, SDS, anti-war folk, be put in jail. She and her parents were trying to keep suburban Chicago segregated against blacks, while Bernie Sanders was trying to get it integrated and go into jail and chairman of a core chapter up there. See, the press doesn't bring that out, so Hillary's supposed to be black person's darling when actually in her formative years she was trying to jack us up. She campaigned for Richard Nixon in '68, and in her last year of high school campaigned for Barry Goldwater, who was the first presidential candidate in recent times to hit that race card. So she has a bad track record for black folks. She's an arrogant, wannabe rich type person. And the real interest is, how did she get not 13 million that she declared, but 26 million that comes out from those hacked emails? $26 million from Goldman Sachs. How does it come out that Obama and Michelle worked for the law firm in Chicago that represented Goldman Sachs? Did Cruz's wife work for Goldman Sachs? Did Hillary's father work for Goldman Sachs? Did the last person Obama nominated for the Supreme Court unsuccessfully work for a law firm that represented Goldman Sachs? that the two people he got on the Supreme Court had been consultants for or worked for law firms that represented Goldman Sachs.
Hmm.
Now, if you want the punchline, this is the question. Who's the richest person to ever be U.S. president?
Hmm.
Yes.
I would have, based on my knowledge, I would have said John Kennedy
No.
from family money.
No. And it's not Trump. It's Barack Obama. See,
Wow.
we got fed a bill of goods. If you look at his record, I'm glad he got somebody black in there, but not that one because he didn't play Jackie Robinson and make it so that everybody wanted
Yeah.
another one of us. Because, you know, I can't see anything he did for us.
Quite respectfully so as well.
And even Obamacare, the person that's responsible for Obamacare is Dr. Bill Frist, senior Republican U.S. Senator from the state of Tennessee.
You're right.
His family founded Blue Cross, Blue Shield, and most of the HMOs. And when he was Republican Senate Majority Leader in 2003, he introduced it. He couldn't get it passed, but the Obama administration got his bill passed. It's a Republican bill, and on analysis of the thing, it's a sop for big insurance companies. But anyway, that's another story. But see, Obama got adopted by his stepfather before he was 2. That makes him real daddy. That's who raised him.
Okay.
The man's name was Lolo Sotoro. He was an Indonesian. When Sotoro was married to Barack's mama, Sotoro was international vice president for Standard Oil. That's Rockefeller's company.
Yes, sir.
That morphed into Chevron and Exxon.
Okay.
Now, Sotoro was also a reserve army major for the Indonesian army, and his job was to run the death squads. He was responsible for the Gestapo. And back in 1960-61, when the Indonesians had that abortive revolution over there, he was in charge of killing the folk. So he decided to set up his own oil company. Indonesia may have the world's largest oil reserves. So
now you said Sotoro. There have been documents, there have been videos about Barack's name being Sotoro and his first name being Barry.
He went to high school as Barry Sotoro.
Right.
Now I actually talked to I ran across one of his classmates. Now you want to talk about that? I started to send one of my sons to the same school Barack Obama went to. It's in Hawaii. This was in 2000, 2001. I didn't. I just couldn't do that, even though I could afford it.
Yeah.
The tuition, not including room and board, was $95,000 a year.
Whoa.
Now this white guy that brags about he was one of Barry Sotoro's classmates, worked with a white woman I know from the Hollywood thing. And he says that when he and Barack went, Barry went, the tuition was $45,000 a year, not including room and board. Now, see, Lolo Sotoro decides to found his own oil company, and he becomes one of the world's largest oil barons. So when he dies a few years ago, after going through all these joint ventures with Halliburton and British Petroleum, he's one of the 10 or 15 richest men on earth. He left everything to a trust fund with 3 beneficiaries, equal beneficiaries. Barack Obama, Barry Sotoro was one of the 3 equal beneficiaries. It's an Indonesian trust, so it's not subject to American regulation. And see,
which goes to show why we know very little about it.
Yes,
sir.
So that firm that Obama and Michelle worked for represented Daddy. You see, and then Halliburton used to do a lot of business.
Defense contractor, right?
Well, no, they
don't handle defense contracts.
They do, but they also own some mercenaries, about 12,000 of them. Used to be known as Blackwater, but in any event,
I'm familiar.
See, Halliburton everybody thinks of Dick Cheney as being CEO, and Dick Cheney was really the strong man in the White House. Nope.
Well, that became a buzzword right around the 9/11 time.
But you see, the real deal with Halliburton is it was chartered by a gentleman known as George Herbert Walker, aka Uncle Herbie, to the first Bush president, George Herbert Walker Bush,
Yes, sir.
and great Uncle Herbie to George Walker Bush. So Halliburton is a Bush Walker family enterprise.
Mm.
The Walkers are part of the family situation. That was the maiden name for George Herbert Walker Bush's wife
Mm.
and mother to George Walker Bush. Now there's a photograph out there that they've suppressed. It's got Lolo Sotoro leaning on a golf club. George Herbert Walker Bush with a golf club across his shoulder in an animated conversation, standing next to a golf cart. Golf cart right next to him. George Walker Bush is sitting in it, standing down on the grass with George Walker Bush's arm around him is young Barry Sotoro.
Wow.
See, so just think about that. The Bushes and the Walker and the Sotoros are family friends. Now there was an interesting thing about relationships. CNN did this as just sort of a little, I don't know, special. But these people are blood kin. Warren Buffett, the richest man in America.
Yes, sir.
Dick Cheney, Brad Pitt, and Barack Obama through his mother, they're all kin.
Mm. Gives you something to think about.
Now,
Gives
if
something to think
you
about.
analyze what Obama does with his executive orders, just about all of it is either military oriented or for the benefit of the LGBTQ, I think they added to it, crowd.
Yeah.
He didn't do anything for us.
At
no
all.
Black judges,
At
no
all.
black generals, no black admirals, no black
He stepped to the forefront for every group, but us. But us.
Because he never been one
they
of
put
us.
they put him on the front of Newsweek magazine with a pink halo and coined it on front of the Newsweek magazine that he was the first gay president. On the front of Newsweek magazine.
Well, if you look at his executive orders, it certainly looks like it.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's his business.
True. But we as African Americans, we were proud of him of accomplishing that feat. But when you're honest about it and fair about it, and you look at what he did for his people, you don't see anything.
Well, see, we need Jackie Robinson types, but we don't get it. Now, Jackie Robinson, we think of as an athlete, first brother to play Major League Baseball. Oh, why didn't they pick up one of these guys from the Negro Leagues? Well, there's a difference. Jackie Robinson graduated from UCLA. He was a captain in the U.S. Army. He had been with the 10th Cavalry. They transferred to the 761st Armored Regiment. He was an All-American football player, and at one time he held the American 100-yard dash and 220-yard dash records. He beat Jesse Owens.
Mm.
Okay, now, he didn't take any nonsense. There's a story about him and why he started playing baseball. Interestingly enough, he'd never played baseball in his life. What happened is he was officer of the day.
Mm-hmm.
His replacement for the evening had brought his wife there. So when it was time for the other guy to take over, Jackie volunteers to take a cab basically home with his wife, see that she got home safe, because it's in Alabama.
Yes.
So he drops her off, he gets a bus. Well, he still got his 45 on, uniform on, and the bus driver tells him to get his end behind to the back of the bus. So Jackie says, oh, hell no. So winds up, the bus is stopped, police come, MP's there. Jackie's got his 45 out there, and he's saying somebody's going to die tonight besides me.
Yeah.
So they court-martialed him. Well, they couldn't get a conviction. So he turned in a resignation because he had a bad ankle from playing football.
Mm-hmm.
He resigned. So they asked him, why don't you go down and apply to the Negro Leagues? He said, I don't know how to play baseball. So, well, Captain, every time we have a softball game, everybody backs up 15 feet when you get to the plate.
Yeah.
And can't nobody run base to base faster than you. You the fastest man in America.
Yeah.
Now, to show you, they like to put him as a tame Negro athlete. He's responsible, but see, he had a bad temper.
Mm.
So he had a bodyguard with the Dodgers. His name was Connor.
Mm-hmm.
O'Connor. He played the rifleman in the TV series.
Okay.
That guy played with the Dodgers. So
Chuck O'Connor. Yes, sir.
So what happened is somebody beamed Jackie or hit him with the ball. Jackie was getting ready to go out and punch the guy. So Chuck O'Connor beats him out there and knocks the pitcher out.
Mm.
So thereafter, Chuck O'Connor was Jackie Robinson's bodyguard. And then, Dodgers hadn't been to the series in a long time.
Mm-hmm.
They were behind 2-1, bottom of the ninth. They were 1 run behind, 2 outs. Jackie got walked to first base. The next batter up's got 2 balls, 2 strikes on him. Jackie steals second.
Mm.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
He gets 2 balls, 2 strikes, ball 3. Foul tip, Jackie steals third.
Wow.
3 balls, 2 strikes, 2 outs,
Cool.
bottom of the ninth. Jackie Robinson steals home.
Wow.
Ties the game up. Dodgers win in extra innings, go on and take the pennant. See, everybody wanted a Blackfoot baseball player. I was a kid. My old man and some of his homies were outside listening to the game around the car. So I listened to that one too.
Mm-hmm.
But now, see, there's an interesting story about that. Jackie Robinson played football for UCLA. He was All-American halfback.
Mm-hmm.
In the same backfield was a guy named Kenny Washington.
Okay.
He was the quarterback. Had such a bad reaction to that amongst the white schools that UCLA forever changed the name of quarterback to tailback. So Kenny Washington became the first black to play in the NFL. The Rams hired him. Then the next year they hired a guy who became an actor named Woody Strode. And then in 1949, they hired Dan Tyler and Tank Younger, the first 2 brothers out of Grambling to play NFL. Meanwhile, in the backfield as wide receiver is a guy named Don Barksdale. Okay. He plays football, runs the high hurdles as a track star. He becomes the first brother to play in the NBA when the Lakers hire him. Mm. So they got 3 brothers in the same backfield, all become the first in the major sports. Okay. Baseball, football, basketball. And the only one that wound up playing the same sport was Kenny Washington. So you see, all of those brothers would take no nonsense. They'd get fights when somebody got racist on them. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Wouldn't take it. But you see, that's what we've needed. Thurgood Marshall type. Yes, we need that.
Yes, sir.
You see, we don't need any of these half-stepping Negroes that are running around trying to protect some little senator that they have and get money under the table.
Protect their own personal interests.
Yeah, it's my, this is my job. No, brother, you're there to advance the interest of the people. This isn't your job.
That's how I feel about a lot of our entertainers and athletes that have acquired so much wealth. It seems to me that they don't understand that a big responsibility of you having that wealth is to give back and to help without any form of looking for profit. And it just seems to me that nobody seems to get that concept. You're worth $50 million, and you feel that if you put $5 million into the neighborhood by opening up something we've already got that we really don't need anymore, whether it be respectfully of beauty shops, rim shops, nobody's ever thinking about opening up a grocery store, a chain of grocery stores.
You can't. You know why you can't do that? All the black capital is tied up in church collection plates.
That's not working.
Of course, it's not working. See, the whole thing about what we go to see, what we're interested in, what we do, is based on distracting us. The jails are used to keep us out of the labor market. Our entertainments fill our heads with stupid, you know, and what we spend our money on comes back to us not at all.
At all.
And then you see, look at what they did with Cosby. See, every time they want to get a black man, it's got something to do with sex.
Yeah.
Now, the feminists are all up in arms. He's a no good, low down, so and 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 so. But look at this recent little thing that happened with the young brother who was accused by the white girl of sexual impropriety on Bachelor in Paradise.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Well, fortunately for him, but not for Cosby, what happened was on videotape.
On video, yes, sir.
So on videotape, she's looking lucid, she's drinking, but so is everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
And she winds up getting naked. She jumps in the pool, puts her legs around him, rubs boobs up in. They get out on the side of the pool. They start having sex. She's on top. They tape it. Don't realize it's being taped, but you know they can't air that.
Yes, sir.
But if it hadn't been for the tape, he'd be in the same situation Cosby's in.
Well, where's the legal precedence for Cosby? We're talking about something that's 30 plus years old, at least 30 years old.
Well, they had one woman that
at one particular time, T's and Blues and the laudits and all that stuff that they're claiming that they gave him, that he gave them, that was socially acceptable.
Well, yeah, the term is sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
Yes, sir.
See, back in the late 60s, 70s, early 80s, sex, drugs, rock and roll groupies. They came to the parties, if they weren't into white rock and roll types,
Mm-hmm.
they came to parties to deal with black rappers last,
Mm-hmm.
black athletes, black actors, black celebrities. And they'd come in, they'd get half naked, go around, do the drugs, the alcohol, hit screws, 3 or 4 or 5, blow 4 or 5 guys at a party, come back at the very next one, and now they get old and they want to be.
Yeah.
Now, see, you have to tie this up with the big picture that the media is not carrying. The extreme feminists are trying to get a change in the rape laws. They want rape to include rape by seduction. What that means is if you wine, dine, and seduce some woman, get her impassioned, so she says, come on, let's do it, that's supposed to be rape too. They want to have notices put on books, magazines, movies, stuff like that that says hazardous, warning, this material may be sexually arousing to young women. They want to get rules in place in colleges so if the girl has sex with the boy and she has remorse, she can get the boy expelled so that she doesn't have to face him during the rest of her college career. See, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's like, that's the downside of the LGBT thing. It's like they have a right to do this, but they're trying to change the whole social program. You can't talk to a girl at work, can't talk to one at school, you can't talk to one anywhere else. So they got online dating services because everywhere you go, there's an off chance that now somebody who does not like that will get on you about it. When I got out there in Hollywood, now 18 years ago, hell, the L word types used to complain because I opened doors for women. I wasn't supposed to do that. I told them to drop dead. I was going to keep opening the doors, but they wanted to complain about it.
Wow.
You see, so it's like girls and boys 101A, you know. But if you start dealing with that, it's okay. I understand their position, but what's the rest of us supposed to do? Where are you supposed to meet a woman, or a woman supposed to meet a guy?
And where is it where her consent is widely understood that she's consented to do whatever we're choosing to do?
Yeah, but you see, consent nowadays, they're trying to push it so she can't say, okay.
She's going to have to make a verbal statement.
Yeah,
now,
exactly. In other words, instead of
a declarative statement, I want to have sex with you.
And in fact, they've got stuff for the college handbooks at some place where the boy is supposed to ask the girl before they even get started with petting, Do you want to go forward? Yes. And at each stage, he's supposed to ask her permission to go forward. See, they want it so that it becomes rape by seduction, even if it's what everybody would understand to be voluntarily
Yes.
done, even if it's what the girls go to see chick flicks for to look at it in the movies.
Yeah.
That's supposed to be wrong. Now, that's getting a little out of place.
That's way out of place, Judge.
But you see, look at what happened with Cosby. He was getting ready to start a network. And you see, the problem is that I ran into this too.
Yes, sir.
He and I and one or two others were the only straight black men in Hollywood that didn't read a script. In other words, if you didn't read a script and you could ad lib, see, and it was live to tape or live, you could control what got said. If you read a script that you had to have a writer do it, they could control what you said.
Okay.
So they don't want us to have that independence. And then the other thing is you have
critical
to keep
thinking.
this.
They don't want critical
Yeah,
thinking.
but see, you also have to have this too. They brag about it and they claim 80 to 90% of everybody in the Hollywood industry is LGBT. So you see, you are a straight black man. You are at the bottom of the heap. They don't want to deal with you.
Wow. Wow.
You know, and like you are poisoned because you don't go with the game. Now,
I've got to ask you this, Judge.
Just one comment on this. I wish black folk had had the opportunity to do this. For 45 plus years, Hollywood has been using their ability to be a primo propaganda engine to push the LGBT agenda.
Yeah.
It's okay if you've got the power, but I'm worried because young men don't know what to do. Young girls don't know what to do.
Yes. Yes. What do young men in particular in this city, because we have a lot of that going on here, that mindset is growing here at a rapid rate. You see it.
What do they need to do?
What do they need to do?
Man up. Here's the problem. All across the country, thanks to the welfare situation. I mean, if you got to get it, you got to get it.
Yes,
For 5 generations when nobody's had a job, that's ridiculous.
Yes, sir.
But you see, they're turning the inner cities into matriarchies.
Run by women.
And the money that's the subsidy does not go to men, like in Tennessee and most southern states. Well, all southern states, there is no welfare for able-bodied men. It all goes through the women.
Yes.
So that puts up a matriarchal situation.
Yes, sir.
It puts up a thing where the movies and the Hollywood industry say it's okay. So you get a woman with 14 kids and 9 different baby daddies. And the boys they have, see, they have that negativity, non-manly thing in them.
Yes, sir.
And they impact your son, my grandsons, because even if you're trying at home, what they see is popular, what they see is okay,
yes,
hip is down, this is what's going on. It deals with that.
Yes, sir.
And see, manly values aren't pushed. It's like bullying.
Yeah.
It's like Back to the Future.
They almost make it seem as though if being a man is not something that you should be striving to do.
You should not. That's what they want. It's like, look at Back at the Future. That's 35 years old now.
Yeah.
McFly, he's bullied by this grown man. He pushes him around everything. The son goes back in a time machine. He convinces his dad to stand up to the bully.
Yeah.
He knocks the bully out. When he comes back in the machine,
yeah,
well, the DeLorean that's fixed up,
yeah,
the ex-bully is working for dad now.
Yeah, yeah.
You see, that's the way it used to be. Stand up as a man.
Yes.
Now you got to call the police on third graders. You know.
You are definitely correct.
You know,
my son attended a school 2 years ago where he was in the 4th grade, and we went there for a particular issue, and we were told that by the police that were there. There was a gang issue where my son was talking with some young men, and some words were said about certain young men being in certain gangs. So they instantaneously called the police on some fourth graders. Nothing happened. Nothing happened. There was no altercation. These young men were basically talking about it because they saw it on their phones and so forth. So they were just having communications about it. Whether it be they liked them, disliked them, it was just communication. They called the police on these young men.
Yeah.
Fourth graders.
Yeah, that's just an embarrassment.
Fourth graders.
That's an embarrassment.
And then the police get there already on edge about things because what they're told they're coming there for. So they don't have any type of, at least at that point, they had no understanding or willingness to listen to anybody. They were just automatically in tuned on who are they, where are they, and what do we need? We're going to take them away. And it was just basic communication between these young men that, hey, this group does this group wears that, this. That's all it was, and they get so static about it.
Somebody there was panicked about the whole thing, and everybody's supposed to.
And I tell you also, Judge, there are very, very few in some of the schools I've seen, and I think that's a problem. And I've addressed that to some of the administrators of schools that I've dealt with. Very few men are in these young schools. Very, very few men.
Yeah, very few.
You know.
And see,
from the janitor all the way up.
See, that's the problem. It's like you can try at home, but your son will be living in an environment where he interacts with other boys. Some women understand this. You got a daughter, you want her to be a lady.
Mm-hmm.
You're a woman, you got a son, you want him to be a man.
Yes,
but too often the women don't know how to raise children because nobody's told them, and they find themselves being the sole parent. But they got it because they went for foolishness. So they've got 3 kids, 2 of them by the same daddy, but they've never been married.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't know how to teach this kid what he needs to be to become a man.
Yes, sir.
So that kid is going to not understand manly protocols. He's going to be a problem, and other kids will react to them. So it becomes a whole big poisonous mix. You see.
How do you feel about them reducing the number to represent what a grade is? To give an example, when I was in high school, elementary, and so forth, an A was recognized as anything from 95 to 100. Now it's been reduced down to 93.
That's just because.
And I was told by school administrators that the reason for that is because a lot of those kids would not be able to reach those numbers. And it would be easier for those kids to reach those numbers, which lets them meet their numbers, which helps them to keep their job.
Yeah, and see, and then the whole education process has been screwed up. It's not about being able to develop cognitive skills and ability. It's about rote memorization, which is only going to get you so far because you memorize the data, but what do you do with it? What's your analysis? They don't understand. See, that is a bad.
I think that's dumbing down our children.
It is, and see, you've got this thing in this county right now, inexcusably. This city council surrendered the charter for the Memphis Board of Education. Now the county board's got it. So you've got 25% of the kids that go to school have 6 elected representatives on the board. And the other 75% got basically 4 right now, going down to 2.
Mm-hmm.
The money comes from the 75%, but is controlled by the 25%.
Mm-hmm.
There's a different educational philosophy here.
Yes, sir.
You've got a situation now where they privatized it, so you have a private entity selecting, educating, qualifying, choosing the teachers, and assigning the teachers, and it's poisonous. You've got this thing where we don't want black teachers influencing white students or white teachers influencing black students. So we have this objective thing, but it doesn't teach kids how to think. So the scores you get on these tests are what count rather than are they getting educated.
Yes.
And then the other thing is too, like you say, 95 and above is what it is. Why don't you just teach them up there? But you see, it gets worse now. There's another thing called college admission. And what you wind up with that is you get this advanced placement stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you get straight A's, people think 4.0.
Mm-hmm.
But for college purposes, if you get a B in an advanced placement class, it's 5.0, not 4.0.
Mm.
And if you get an A, it's 6.0. So if you get a kid that's gone to a school with advanced placement classes and he is competing with your kid where your kid doesn't get these, your kid can be a straight A student and lose out to somebody who's just an ordinary student, but they've got more advanced placement classes. And then see if you go to a school
Based on false pretenses.
yeah, but see if you go to a school that has what they call an advanced placement track, they up the whole grade point average by 1. So you will find some really crazy stuff like a student, and particularly in California,
Yes, sir.
the student's got a pretty good SAT score and he's got a 4.0, but he's turned down because somebody's got a 5.2, but that kid's got a lot of B's. And as far as the SAT or the ACT, you get kids that start going to classes to study for this in the 5th and 6th grade, or the LSAT, Law School Aptitude Test. So they've been studying this for 5-6 years. When they go in, they don't go in and take an aptitude test. So it's like sort of you are opening up tryouts for the school gymnastic team.
We could go on all night, Judge.
And
I mean, I really wish I've held you
we're
longer.
running out of time.
I tell you this. I want to ask one last thing of you, to kind of give our viewers just a tidbit. Are you planning on getting back in any form of politics?
I don't know about politics. I'm getting too old, but I'm being behind the throne some places right now.
I got you.
I might even do another show. There is a resistance because even though this is interesting, this will show you what I'm talking about. For some years, I was the #2 syndicated show daytime in America, and in some parts of the country, #1.
Yes, sir.
And I was with CBS. So was Judy. So was Oprah. So was Phil. So they brought in a guy named Roger King, who discovered Oprah and Phil.
Okay.
And he had management of all 4 of us. So he's straight up guy. So I jumped from #4. I started beating Phil, so I made it to #3.
Okay.
Then I started beating. Well, Oprah was beating Judy, and then they pushed Judy, and Judy started beating Oprah. So then I started beating Oprah for #2. Then I started beating Judy for #1. And they changed the rules. And what the rules were is Nielsen, who does the ratings, offered CBS this deal. Said, we can give you this choice if you want. In any time where one of the diary keeping households tapes the show, if they watch the tape within 48 hours, we'll give you double ratings. So I never was carried on CBS affiliates. 78% of the people that carried me were Fox stations.
Okay.
That's a long story. Murdoch liked what I stood for, the man stuff, but that's another thing. But CBS had duopolies. In other words, in the 10 largest TV markets, they had 2 stations affiliated with them. So when Judy got her rating, she'd get 4 times what she ordinarily got in the 10 largest cities. They refused to change me to the same standard, so I just get the 1 rating. But see, I was still beating her on occasion.
Okay.
So I took the stockholders newsletter. I bought a couple of shares of stock and got it. So they're bragging about me being their #1 moneymaker, and then they want to tell me, well, your ratings are falling. So, well, everybody's has, but I'm still your top of your heap #1 moneymaker. Yeah. That is what you're saying. So you want to go ask me to take an IOU for what you owe me, some big time millions.
I read about that.
Go to the devil.
I read
and
about
then
that.
See, they're talking to me every day about why do you want to push this duty, honor, obligation, responsibility, bravery, and courage. Why don't you just say people need to be able to do what they want to do? If they're afraid of something, that's okay. Why can't they be cowards? Because it's a low down thing. I'm not going to say that.
Yes, sir.
So
they were actually warning you.
Oh yeah, I had the biggest doggone fights. I'm not going to rule that way. I'm going to rule it straight up and down, fair. I don't care. So they had a pool, and people would apply to my show, but they'd give the case to Judy. So they wanted to give me all this complex nonsense, and they had people that didn't even know why they were there. You know,
Well,
so we had a big fight every day. One of the worst jobs I've ever had in my life. Every doggone day, you have somebody with an agenda that's like, have you lost
I
your
read
mind?
that you all were actually next door to each other. Your
Yeah,
courtroom was per
my
se
set's here
set.
and hers is at your couch over there.
Yes, sir.
So we taped on alternate days. In person, she acts just like you see on TV. She's like 4'7" or something like that, you know, crazy, but you know, she is
Her
what she
husband,
is.
or what used to be husband, who used to be over the People's Court at one time,
Yeah,
presided over
Shineland. You've heard
Jerry
it.
Shinley.
Yeah, but you've heard of Shineland outside of the courtroom.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Most reverse judge in New York history. Tell you what's interesting about that. You remember when they had this riot because the police sodomized this Haitian immigrant with a broomstick?
Yes, sir. I think it's Diallo.
Yeah, he dismissed the case, and the riots happened. The Supreme Court of New York reinstated the case. The cops got convicted. There was another riot. Some cops shot together the groom and the best man sitting out front of the apartment building where they were having a wedding reception. They were unarmed. He dismissed the case. There was a riot. They reinstated the charges. Cops were convicted. Another one, some guy that was a deaf mute, he was trying to explain that he couldn't talk. They shot him 16 times. He dismissed the charges, riot, they reinstated it, they got convictions. So you see,
I mean,
it's interesting what Hollywood does. See, it's like they brought me in for the really nasty purpose of intimidating Judy so she would not ask for so much money on a new contract.
okay.
That's how I got my foot in the door.
Okay.
They tried to kill the show on purpose. But what I did is I hired somebody, paid them out of my pocket to do the PR, and that was in the second year. So it went for 13 more years until I said, you know, I can't go for this. But
I mean, well, people watched both shows for two different reasons. People watched her for shock value because they knew she would say something crazy. They knew somebody with the litigants in the courtroom would either do something retarded or crazy or not be prepared, and she would respond to that. We watched your show because there was always an angle of goodness to yours because you were always trying to teach something, and particularly dealing with the young males. I've seen plenty of your shows where you had to butt heads with a wannabe know-it-all or a young lady that didn't understand that she was in the court proceedings and so forth. But it never, on your show, it never got to the point where you were upset with you, as opposed to in a lot of cases with Judge Judy, you could be upset with her if it was nothing more than her demeanor toward her litigants, how she talked with them, how she dealt with them. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So, but I say, Brother Brown, if I may call you that, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Glad you got here. I'd love to spend more time and talk with you, and I'm pretty sure our listeners would love to do the same. We ran over a little bit time today, but that's what happens when you have beautiful people in your presence that have a lot to talk about and a lot of stuff that they know that they can share with you. So we're going to try to do everything we can to get Brother Brown back to us because he is our brother, regardless of what you think of him professionally. He is our brother, and I will always respect him and treat him as such. Thank you once again.
I'm talking about professional. The homeboy, me, for 10 years in Tennessee, I turned out to be the judge with the lowest reversal rate out of all the trial judges in Tennessee. In 10 years, I only had 4 reversals, partial reversals.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
The next lowest number was 42 by the second place judge. So in other words, what I did stood up on appellate review.
Well,
so, and those weren't reversing the cases; those were just on partial points.
Okay.
Pretty good.
Well, I would say I would agree with
I
that.
went to UCLA Law School, got in the front door. Homeboys ain't supposed to go there.
That's correct. Well, I tell you what, I'm going to do everything I can to get him back and let me get in his brain, if he will, from the legal standpoint. So thank you once again for taking the time out. We appreciate it.
All right.
And hey, we'll catch you next time.
Okay.
Goodbye, you all.